Welcome to The Deepest Cut, a podcast about the movement from painful experiences to meaningful music. I'm your host, Matt Connor. There's an ongoing discussion, or even debate, depending on how you feel about things, among songwriters or performing artists about the capacity for pain or personal emotion that a song should be allowed to have. In other words, how much pain can you document? How much grief should you express? In short, how much are you allowed to bleed? Some practitioners have described the work of songcraft as opening up a vein and bleeding out. But for others, there's an artistic responsibility to not make the stage or the medium your therapy session. There are arguments to be made on all sides here, as with most discussions. But for singer-songwriter Zane Vickery, there's nothing that remains hidden from view, no matter how deep the wound. For Zane, the more he can convey the reality of his own experiences and emotions, which includes the darker shades involving pain, sorrow, and frustration, the greater the possibility of reaching someone who's in a similar place. If you've ever heard Zane's music, you know just how meaningful that level of vulnerability can be. I heard him for the first time at a Hutchmoot conference in recent years, and I found myself overwhelmed that night by the beauty of his lyrical depth and vivid imagery. His experiences matched so many of my own, and his willingness to present them in all of their brokenness provided a real gift for me on that night. Dare I say, I even healed a little bit. It made sense then to invite Zane into this series, to talk more about his views on all of this, and how they played into his song, Whatever Light We Have. Stay tuned for our conversation with Zane Vickery here on The Deepest Cut. Hello and welcome to The Deepest Cut. My name is Matt Connor and I'm your host. Today I'm fortunate enough to sit across from Zane Vickery. Zane, first, welcome to the show, and how are you doing?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I know that's the cliche thing to say, but I'm really happy to be here and to have gotten that invitation from you for today and today only. I am very good, man.
Well, we're glad to be a part of your good day to talk about painful songs and difficult subjects. Zane, obviously, we want to talk about your song, Whatever Light We Have, and we want to get into, the context of a lot of that. But I'd love to start with my experience of you, which is going back to Hushmoot, the Rabbit Room conference gathering from last fall, which would have been 2023. I am sitting in the audience, admittedly new to your music. You're introduced, you begin to play these songs that, it's not uncommon, especially in that crowd, to have people who can even beautifully talk about their trials and their issues, their painful experiences. But you really reached, it just felt like reaching from this very, very deep place, and then a willingness to put that out there in a way that I guess I want to start here. And this is a long meandering question. However, I've heard from some artists where they will talk about there's a responsibility not to bleed all over the audience, right? And that maybe it's their responsibility, to maybe curate the pain in some way. And when I was listening to you, it felt like the opposite of that. It was like, hey, I'm a human, so naturally I bleed. And here are some areas that I've bled, and I documented the bleeding, and here it is. And maybe that's all like a grotesque imagery here to lead off the podcast. I'm not trying to make it that way. I bring that up to say it was connective tissue for me. It was like that was the beauty for me, that you were so willing to go there. I guess I wanted to say all of that to you and get your response to it, wondering what you thought about the maybe bleed too much thing, about artistic responsibility, and or is that what you feel is, no, I want to present in and all of it. I want to reach that deep because that's where any meaningful exchange really happens. I just wonder what you'd say to all of that.
Man, there were, yeah, I hope that I articulate in a way that I answer all the things I want to.
Sorry, there's like 10 vague questions in there.
No, it's so good. Yeah, this is gonna be fun. I will acknowledge that in terms of this music performance recording thing, I'm relatively young. I've spent some time around people that have been doing this for decades. And if I'm learning something in my 30s, I'm never arriving. I'm never popping to the other side of something. Like every day is not some new revelation. I'm wanting to see it for the small piece that it is in some greater growing thing. So I say that to say maybe there is a wisdom to not bleeding over the audience. And I have yet to learn how to go through these steps. But for now, for the present person that I am, like when I heard you say that, I winced.
You winced because you were like, "Oh, that's me and I'm guilty," or you winced like, "Oh, I don't believe that at all."
I wince like I disagree wholeheartedly. And I feel like a sound argument for that is there's a craft to bleeding over your audience. I've been listening to emo music since sixth grade. I mean, when I found Linkin Park and Paramore, and I still love so much, but a lot of emo music can be applied generally and is lacking a personal, like, I mean, these are hard hitting subject areas and things that we can relate to, but occasionally you're just like, really, man, like you felt so brokenhearted, you wanted to whatever, and there's no connective tissue there. I recognize the emotion, I recognize the extreme state of despair kind of that you're in, but I don't really like feel anything unique to you here in it. Has often, and I won't speak for everyone, has often been a complaint of mine. The music maybe matches the energy, but as far as what is being sung and how it's being sung, there was something lacking. But then you can kind of flip over to the other side of the spectrum where you have beautiful storytellers who use imagery and metaphor to great effect, who use music to great effect. But sometimes I have had issues. I will not speak for everyone. I've had issues wondering, like, do you mean it? And so when I got into writing this song stuff, I acknowledged like I need to learn how to approach these subjects, but I have to talk about these subjects. And most importantly, I have to sing them like I mean them. And I think what God is teaching me about myself is as I've been caught up in the last 2 years of what is my genre, what is my niche, where are these things and pockets that I can market myself and really make a brand, make a platform. All that's left remaining is like, can I write things that sound like I mean them when I sing them? I mean, that's just the most unfrilled, unpolished thing that I can give you, and I want that to be, yeah, my clap back to don't bleed on the audience. I will bleed on you, but I'm trusting that a part of you is bleeding too, and maybe we can all just kind of look each other in the eye for a second and go, "It's hard." That is the face of the Father that I see in you. You know, the suffering that we are all a part of, and we are wanting to bring Jesus into earnestly with our guts. That's the dream. Now, whether I whether I land it, I don't know, but I am giving it my best shot, and I'm trying to write music that serves that purpose. But I will say, like, I'm still learning in that. I think I have grown in some areas in the last 2 years, and I think I have more to discover in that. But for the time being, I I, I think you should bleed a little.
You, your songs hold some really wonderful imagery, and you did a whole album around like a response to Narnia, right? Like immersed in Narnia. So like that feels obvious to say that it has literary imagery. When you're trying to communicate something meaningful, when you're trying to communicate something so true, is there a trap to being veiled about it?
100%.
right? You like you can put it in a way that's some imagery, and then suddenly it becomes a little too muddled, where maybe it's like if you were just plain spoken, it would actually get across. How do you handle that challenge between, you wanna communicate something authentic and be straightforward, and yet there's this, like, desire to maybe dress it up in a way that says it differently than maybe others have said, or says it in a way that you're inspired to say it. Does that tension feel familiar to you as a songwriter?
It does feel very familiar. If you don't mind, I will travel back to how I sort of had to fight through that myself. This is a very unpolished, unrehearsed answer. I made the decision to step away from my second role in ministry, vocational ministry, in 2019. And I said 2020 was going to be the year that I actually tried to write songs. I had been a dreamer about that for 4 years, but I had been a police officer, worked for two churches. My wife was in school. It just wasn't a wise thing to do at any junction. And a lot of the motifs and themes that started to hit me in that time, I latched them to Narnia characters for some reason. Um, and that felt like the pull. Like, let's do a concept record on Narnia. Let's make a little song for every little character, and it'll be cool, and all the nerds will unite, and I can build a fan base out of that or something. I don't know. I got 6 months into that, Matt, and I was like, this is veiled. It's just projecting my wistful hopes and most optimistic beliefs about Christianity out there. And this is just nothing more than posturing and posing on my behalf. Oh man, it kept me up at night. I mean, if I reached a point like if you're taking all this time and spending all this creative energy, I had three very small children at the time. My wife was working night shifts. I was staying up till 3 in the morning trying to make something markable, unique, and like that was the angle of my focus, to make it that thing that stood out. And that is just horrible, horrible fuel. I think it burns at a high octane, but it just pollutes the whole system. I started all the way over with Breezewood, and I was like, what? We need to start digging into this stuff, man. We need to start digging into being locked in your room. We need to start digging into when you couldn't get out, what did Narnia give you? And I think that's like the whole finding your voice thing. I mean, that was the start for me. So what it introduced, though, this is my long roundabout answer, is it did introduce this gut feeling of, is this the best that I can do? Have I really sat with this for the longest amount of time? You know what? Maybe we're not going to pick the pin back up for 8 weeks, and we're just going to go to therapy, bud. And, or maybe we're not going to go to therapy this week, and we're just going to go sit for a minute, or maybe present this to this friend. And that pulled me out of the whole time constraint thing, because when you have an album, when you have a project date, you want deadlines, you have you want to be able to deliver, you have, maybe you crowdfunded and people are expecting updates, and it's pressure. But that all formed just this thing of being able to read a line and go, that's not me. It's not me, man. And we're not going to freak out if it doesn't come. I'm sure so many people can articulate this in a way more polished way, but I do keep it simple. I am able to look at my words and look at my work and know if it's my best. That feels like my superpower these days. That is how I fight the veiled nature. I think veiling anything just comes really naturally to both the songwriters and the ones that don't, like to all of us. I mean, it's just part of how we're brought up.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Especially in the church, I think, especially in these circles of codependency, or places where we can get, you know, presentation, yeah, is emphasized. And I'm glad that you've developed that sort of sixth sense, that superpower. I love the way you say that. Zane, how does that work its way into the song that we're talking about now, or even the batch of songs that you're writing these days?
So in I'm gonna get the year wrong. We are in so in October of 2022, excuse me, August of 2022, I started writing a song called Whatever Light We Have. A buddy of mine named Miller had hit a hard season of trying to write some songs, trying to figure out what his career path was going to be when the songs just didn't take like you wanted to, maybe. Forgive me, Miller, if I'm wrong in summing that up, but he started working as an HVAC technician in like the middle of winter. I think. I don't know. I just remember this period of his life where he had shifted to a really blue collar job, and it was difficult hearing about that through the phone calls. But he took a picture one day as he crawled under a house, and there's this crawl space window in the foundation of this home, and every patch of just that crawl space dirt, man, it's desolate, stinky, but in this one tiny patch were all these little green plants huddled, like crawling over each other to get to the sunlight. I've never been maybe more moved by a photograph, and that's the cover for my single "Is There Room Enough for Me." But after like I did that song and used that photo for the cover, like that was just the image that stayed with me, that I saw in everyday life, like all of us just at whatever cost doing whatever we can to hold on to hope, even if it means other people choking out underneath us. And that was a lot of my experience within the church, and a lot of events that played out before, during, and after that. So kind of the same thing. I wanted this profound way to talk about all that this stuff, this picture was stirring up in me. And all right, well, let's just go with whatever light we have, man. Keep trying to grow with whatever light that you have. And for me, at that moment, my pursuit of light did not really fit the status quo, and caught the ire and judgment of some folks that had known me from previous seasons in my life. Like, is there a way to still seek and still pursue truth that doesn't come at the expense of others, at least in that time? So it was weird. I had this like heavy topic. I didn't really have the voice for it, or the words for it at the time. I had two legal pads, probably full of material that I was just trying to piece something together through. And in October of 2022, I opened for an artist named Andy Squires in Knoxville. I was driving to Hutchmoot, and I woke up with my car on fire upside down, thinking it was over. And I was hit head on by a suicidal driver on I-40. A man 2 weeks prior had been forced to go dry for the first time in his life, and couldn't handle it anymore. So he took his wife's keys in the middle of the night and drove into oncoming traffic and hit me. So for a couple months there, the only thing that I could think about was healing my body. And this is the long roundabout answer to say the healing of the body, it takes a measured amount of time. Like it will happen as best it can. But when that runs out, then we have to start looking at the soul. And to look at my soul, I also had to look at my art and the things that I was making. And the last thing that I wanted to do, spring of last year, 2023, was pick up a pen. It was almost as if throughout the course of my life, I had just pulled in all of these elements to build a house of cards, a support system, a structure, a way of understanding the world, a way of understanding me. And a part of that fundamental understanding was that I wasn't worthy of good things and I wasn't worth saving. Now, in the big metaphysical sense, sin, all these things that I can't, like, I'm worth saving. But in the blue collar way, in the immediate, in the flesh and blood, I was not. And here, all of a sudden, I have fundamental proof that I needed to stick around. And every day of my life since that moment is acknowledging that these are moments that I should have missed. These are opportunities that are affording me something to learn here about me. Like, God has carved out this space and this time with this new understanding. And yeah, so like last spring, if we're being completely honest, like I admitted myself to a partial hospitalization and spent time with people that have suffered without, I won't say no return, no immediate return. I was there with folks that had lost relatives to home invasions and gang violence. And like, what do you say? What do you say to someone who's lost a son? who just hopped in a car to go to the mall with his friends, and they'd come home. What's the redemptive spin on that? I'm so thankful for whatever light we have though, because it sat there at the back of my mind, just going, "You need to come home. You need to come back. You need to come finish this." And for 6 months that I was sitting there trying to, I will say, for 6 months I tried to piece together my blown up house with all this broken furniture and woodwork and scraps, and it didn't work. But I've now started to build my life with substance and with honesty, with patience, with meekness. At least I'm trying. That song has always been back there asking me to finish it. So in the yeah, starting in the spring when I was in the facility, I took my two legal pads in there with me, and whatever light we have, was just God's little whisper back to finding my love for writing again. I thought that was what made it the best song to talk about today.
By the way, in the song, you wrestle with part of it is about your parenting, right? I mean, you're looking at your kids and you say something like you have a scarlet letter and a tinfoil hat, and like looking at that. Like, can you talk about that angle of the song and maybe some of the other lyrical context that people are going to be listening to?
Yeah,
Mm.
deconstruction was a hot word there and still is, and there's a lot of validity to be explored. I did find in my own reconstruction that I felt the magnetic forces of ideology, maybe more prevalent than ever. I mean, especially just all of what came up during COVID in terms of politics, and that's a whole podcast series in itself, right? You know, for a while there with kids, it's just bottles and it's potty training and it's fundamental function to start them on the path of independency in terms of function. But I started to see, okay, now I've got to confront what they are beginning to ingest and how they are going to feel pulled and swayed. Like, I've actually got to start figuring out, like, I can't explain this to you if I can't even figure out what it means to me. Or I don't want to outright tell you how to feel about something as was done to me. I want you to be able to make decisions for yourself. You know, what's great, like, I just didn't understand the volume of those choices that a 5-year-old will begin to face. Or on another note, like, my kids are already beginning to come home from school and they are experiencing someone not wanting to sit with them or be their friend, or they're facing the grief of a friend who moves school and they're treating it like a death. And that is now starting to spin into an anxiety about losing me or their mom. I mean, these are burdens, dude. I want from the get go, I want them to know how hard it is to grow up here, but also what love can do in that. I'm finding a space of honesty with my children that I never thought I'd find. Christmas Day was hard for me. My wife was working this year. I'm only bringing this up because I feel it's pertinent. My wife was sleeping during Christmas Day, and I had a very hard morning of getting all the packaging and trash bags and getting the house, you know that Christmas morning chaos. And I shed a couple tears in my kitchen, man, just because I was alone and was feeling Christmas is just odd for me, man. I got socks and bed sheets most of the time growing up, and I grieve. I grieve my family. I grieve particular experiences. I grieve the fact that I don't have a ton of family in my life right now. So my daughter said, "Daddy, why are you crying?" I said, "Baby, I'm happy sad. Like, I'm sad about all of this stuff. They know about some of my experiences growing up, but I'm happy that I get to have a good Christmas with you." My daughter went and got her favorite music box and her teddy bear, came and gave it to me, and my children gathered around me, started hugging me, man. I mean, it was like they were laying hands. "It's okay, Daddy." And I just started to bleed all over my audience. I said, "Guys, I'm so sorry. I try so hard to be a good daddy to y'all, and I'm so afraid of messing it up. I'm so afraid that me being sad will lead to me being angry and that you will think daddy's angry at you and my children in the voice of the Lord. You're a good daddy because you're here," which felt like oddly connected to my wreck. I still don't really know the full meaning of why my daughter said, "You're a good daddy because you're here," but that's what she said to me in that moment. And we love you. So I have a precedent for honesty with my children that feels both guiding and supportive, and there's still authority and discipline and structure in our home. But I also have the out now of going, Daddy's sad, angry, and frustrated. And most of it is because of stuff that is way back. But that is what I wanted to communicate really in that song in my own little way. Like, we're all just trying, we're all both grow. I mean, that was the other thing too. I grew up under the illusion that once you hit 30, you had your career, you know how the world works. It's opportunity to seize and to beat out the competition. Whereas now, like, man, it is a journey. I have people way older than me that are behind me in some areas. I have people way younger than me that are ahead of me in some areas. And man, like we have to help each other along. And the best way to do it is in our vulnerability, not in our posturing. Be careful with it. Some people will weaponize it. There's a discipline to it. But for the moment, this is my last bit, Matt. I love impressionist painters these days. I have not given a rip about art, but I'm all on the Monet train because he captures what he sees, but it's always at an angle. It's always kind of down. It's always kind of up. And it speaks to me that for this moment, I was just trying to capture what was beautiful right in front of me. That at this stage, this is my little window into what I'm trying to understand about myself, how I'm trying to make sense of the world, how I'm trying to see God in it. I wanted whatever light we have for this brief post-COVID window of me understanding what it means to be a father and trying to love other folks well. This is what makes sense to me. This is what keeps me going. Maybe it can help.
I love it. I love it. It feels like the right time to be able just to tell people, stay tuned here. Here is Zane Vickery's Whatever Light We Have.
Midnight, 7 hours to go. Cumulonimbus in my frontal lobe. How do I explain this world to my little boys and my courageous girl? I don't know. Most days I wonder where you're at. The kids are dressed in scarlet letters and tinfoil hats. Double down, content to be indifferent, self-sufficiently. Not God, I'm waiting for the day I lock my outrage in a cage and throw the key away. What's the point of justice if injustice is the cost? What's the point of judging if the jury's never rolled? What's the point of wanting when the giving breaks my back to tying the with whatever light you have? judging if the jury's never on? And what's the point of wanting when the giving breaks my back? Keep trying to grow. Keep trying to grow. With whatever light we have. 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 Night, 100 miles to go. Think I see headlights on my side of the road.
You've been listening to The Deepest Cut, part of the Rabbit Room Podcast Network. Audio production and theme music by Isaac Vining. Logo and identity work by Meg Cook. The Deepest Cut was created and hosted by me, Matt Connor. Thank you so much for listening.